I know that was important, but you perform Gilbert and Sullivan?
I am the very model of a scientist Solarian. I've studied species Turian, Asari, and Batarian. I'm quite good at genetics as a subset of biology because I am an expert, which I know is a tautology. My xenoscience studies range from urban to agrarian. I am the very model of a scientist Solarian.
Hello everybody and welcome back to my favorite YouTube channel on the Citadel. So again, we got Mass Effect. It was only like 300 pages and I really needed something to, tide over everything till, the Dune book's finished, because right now I'm currently going through House Harkonnen, which is book 2 in the Prelude to Dune series, which takes place like 2 decades before the events of the original Dune novel, with a young Leto Atreides. That, is 700 pages, and I'm not finishing that in a week, so I needed something to tide over. So I got my first Mass Effect novel, which is Mass Effect Revelation by Drew Karpyshyn. Now, for those of you who are Star Wars fans, he also wrote the Darth Bane trilogy, which is one of the best trilogies in all of the expanded universe. He wrote a couple books in the Old Republic era, of the SWTOR era, of the MMO. I believe he helped write KOTOR 1, and he was a big part of the SWTOR games as well. So he has been a big part of Star Wars, and so I know him from there, but he is one of the lead writers on Mass Effect as well, so he wrote a bunch of novels. I think he's pretty much the only one that wrote novels besides William C. Ditz, but from what I hear, William C. Ditz really messed up the continuity of Mass Effect, so much so that they had to label the book non-canon, which the expanded universe never did. Even in its darkest days, they never did that. So, like, they could have arguably done that for the Clone Wars 2008 by Dave Filoni, but they didn't do that. Nor did they do that with the Denning verse, or whatever you want to call it, They kept all that intact, so crazy that happened with the Mass Effect universe. But, yes, this book, I think, paves the way for an excellent introduction into the universe. I did talk about some comics within the universe as well, but I think those really benefit from already knowing the games, as the little neat additions to the universe. But I think if you have heard your friends or anyone talk about the Mass Effect series, and you're like, I don't know if I want to get into that video game franchise. I don't know if I'm willing to put in the time, because, they're not as long as other games like Persona 5 or Dragon Age Inquisition. You're going to be playing those games over like 100 hours. They are long games if you're trying to get everything done. Whereas the Mass Effect franchise, you can get that done about 30 to 50 hours for each game. They're not super duper long, but longer than like a shorter game. So, but that's a big investment, right? That's a lot of time and energy to pour into something. So, is that worth it? Well, I feel if you read this book, which is a prequel to the entire series, as it takes place like a decade or two before the events of the Mass Effect video game, that this would be an excellent introduction to you into the universe, into the kind of themes, some characters, and motifs, and kind of a little bit of the world building already established there. I mean, you'll get a bit of a retread of that if you play the video game, but it's a nice little introduction. And I mean, if you have Kindle, you can get this book for like $3.99, so not a large investment. And you can use this as a means of seeing, is this something I would be interested in continuing? And I think this is a good place to start if you've never played Mass Effect and you're like, well, do I want to do that? Do I want to invest my time and energy into that? Start with this book. See what you think of it. I think this book is great. The main characters in it are this lady named Kaylee Sanders, Lieutenant Anderson, who Anderson is a big character in the actual games, so we will see him again. Kind of plays like this mentor role to your character, who, of course, if I don't know if your character's been born by this point, but if your character is born, they're very young, so they don't matter right now. But it's a younger version of Anderson, because he kind of plays the kind of like mentor role. in the Mass Effect games, kind of like the Obi-Wan Kenobi. Not exactly, but he's that person you look up to. And then you have Saren, who is the main antagonist. Well, there's the big threat, of the entire trilogy, but the human, for all intents and purposes, even though he's an alien, um, the human villain in that game is Saren. But here we get to see an earlier version of him prior to his involvement with the events of the first game. So there's a lot of interesting moving pieces here. We get to see a little bit of the early war between, because the whole thing was a Mass Effect universe. Those of you who don't know, we found in like the 2100s, long after I'm dead, we found alien artifacts deep within Mars. Protheans, as we've later figured out, this ancient race of beings that have long since died. And their technology that we find allows us to make better spaceships, better technology, better this and that, which inevitably finds us near the end of the galaxy, or of our own galaxy. We find these things called a Mass Effect field, which is this thing that can make you travel faster than light to certain key sections of different parts of different galaxies and stuff. So as humans are beginning to explore, beginning to advance, they come into contact with these aliens called the Turians, and this begins the First Contact War. It was a very short war in all terms, in the long scheme of things, but it does cause resentment between these two factions, humans and Turians. But what we learned is that there's this larger organization of this council, which has an amalgamation of a bunch of alien races all within it, and they kind of stop the conflict and make peace, and so now the humans are integrated into this larger-than-life society that they didn't even know about. We thought we were alone in the galaxy, and here we are now in this political, sort of citadel, place, which is very much like Coruscant, except that it's a space station that's huge and has a whole bunch of alien species within it. But all that being said, there is this crazy scientist working on something mysterious, which those of you who play the game, by the end of the book, you'll know what it is. You'll pretty much suspect what it is midway through, and you'll be validated by the end. But it's an early stage of stuff that we'll see moving forward. And Anderson goes to stop it with the help of Kaylee Sanders, and Anderson gets to interact with Saren, who is a very bigoted racist. Because of those of you who watched my reviews of the comics, the comic book Mass Effect Evolution, we learned that during the First Contact War, Saren fought in that and doesn't like humans. Because of that, he's prejudiced. And then also, shortly after the war, his brother, who kind of got crazy with similar things going on, he ended up dying. So that also upset Saren a bit. But Saren's a very cold and uncaring person within this novel. But it all culminates into something pretty good. It's a lot of the stuff I kind of already know because I've played the games. But like I said, it is a good introduction. If you don't know anything about the games and want to get into the universe, this is an excellent place to start. And if you are a fan of this universe, yeah, there might be some retread of information you already know. But it is a fascinating thing to see a younger Anders. But this is not Dragon Age. And Saren pre-Mass Effect 1 to see what he was like. And a lot of interesting characters and stuff, and so far everything I read from Drew Karpyshyn, he has not failed. Is this one of his better works? It's good, but I still think Darth Bane trilogy is one of the best things he's ever done. I haven't read everything he's done, but it's my favorite of his so far. But it's still a solid read, and I do recommend it. If you're a fan of this universe, and if you're not, I think this is an excellent place, regardless, to start reading into. It's not a very big, expanded universe of Mass Effect. It's actually rather small and contained. But I do think this is worth your time, regardless of where you're at. Whether you're not a fan, but you're interested in maybe becoming one, or if you already are. Either way, I think it's a good time for you. So that's pretty much it, guys. I have some spoilers to talk about, so if you don't want spoilers, time to get out. And otherwise, come stick around. So, it begins 9 years after the discovery of the the Prothean ruins on Mars. And we get to see a little bit of those early days of during the conflict of the First Contact War, and then we jump ahead to 8 years later, and we learn that Anderson is 20 in this book, which is insane because I'm 22, which means in the time frame of this book, I'm 2 years older than Anderson, which is insane. Though, chronologically speaking, I would be long dead by now. So that's fun. We deal a lot with Saren's racism in here. A lot of people are prejudiced, biased, and racist, speciesist for different reasons within this book. The humans have it toward all the aliens because that's how we are. You know, the interesting thing, which seems kind of realistic, is that the moment we learn that there were something other in the universe, you know, that there were other things apart from humans, racism with us kind of went away. Because all of that went toward things that we didn't understand. You know? So the racism toward each other kind of stopped, and we kind of had this, we got this universal, like, government for the Earth because we were expanding across the stars, you know? So it wasn't no worry of overpopulation or anything, but, you know, it's just interesting how we just switched from racism of other people to racism of species we don't understand. But at the same time, they also have that toward us. Saren's a very amoral character. I don't know if he's explicitly evil in this book. He just does not care. He's not a good person. He will do whatever. He does take a little bit too much pleasure in killing people, though. Especially humans. He is very prejudiced because of the war he was in. He is very much make Turians great again. Sorry, I don't mean that. Don't get upset. Relax. Whatever side of the aisle you're on, relax. He's just very Turian-centric. He thinks Turians are the best, that they should be the predominant race within Citadel space. And he doesn't like, you know, that his other species kind of capitulates and allows the council to do whatever. So, you know, he's very much against all of that. Politics and humanity is fascinating within this setting because, and this is a thing similar, I think, in other tropes of sci-fi as well, but humans, humanity, you know, a lot of these alien species we learn about in this book, like the Asari, the Turians, the Solarians, the Quarians, whatever, they've been a part of this whole intergalactic, like, community, this political structure and environment for a long, long time. Some of them for centuries, you know, integrating themselves into this, getting themselves more politically maneuvered and more politically important in the span of a long time. But it took a long time to become these advanced civilizations with ships, societies, technology, all this stuff. And then here are humans running on through. But that's the thing. Humans live less than these other species. They technically are lesser than other species in a lot of aspects, and yet because they live less long, they kind of push harder. They push boundaries. They achieve. They strive. They succeed far more often in a shorter span of time than the other races, which scares the other races because of the way, I mean, just by the time of this book alone, you know, it's only been 8 years since first contact with humans, and already they're everywhere. Like, there's 15% of the population on the Citadel Station, which is like the Coruscant of this universe. 15% of it is human already at this span. By the time of the actual games, it's even more than that. So they have integrated themselves so much into all of this intergalactic web, and they've become vastly more important in the political realm of all this in 8 years. There's going to be like another 2 decades before we get to the events of the first game. How have humans accomplished this in such a short span of time? It's terrifying to other races, understandably so, but at the same time, it's a bit bigoted to just not let them. So there's this constant, like, I understand where they're coming from, and I understand where the humans are coming from, because they feel like they're being slapped on the back like a bad child just for being themselves, for progressing, for evolving, for achieving, you know. But at the same time, a lot of these, you know, it'd be like my work has seniority and stuff like that, you know. if I work at a place for 15 years, you know, and someone else gets, you know, like the promotion to do whatever, like, how is that fair, right? These alien races have been doing this stuff for years and years and years and years and years, and humans just come out of the blue and are like now becoming this important faction. What? So I understand that, but at the same time, it's really fascinating to read about, and this does get reiterated within the games, but the way it was written here was really good. On kind of understanding both perspectives. I also really like the political angle that this. It wasn't a lot, but there's enough of it in here. I was like, whoa, Drew can write politics pretty well too, because the current human representative of the Citadel Station right now, you know, argues and stuff with the council members, and she's trying to like outmaneuver them, but she finds out, you know, by the end that she got played, and it's this interesting thing there that I really enjoyed. And the council leaders themselves are also really interesting, you know, because you need to be impartial, and they also represent their whole species, but they're also, you know, trying to do the betterment of the entire galaxy. You know, it's a different council from the Jedi Council. They just represent like their entire race on this station, you know, and they intercede in behalf, like, you know, it's insane. But a lot of good things there, and by the end of it, Saren ends up having to work with Anderson, and Anderson says he'll be bait. Saren immediately goes in, kills people, blows up the station, blames it all on Anderson, frick. So he doesn't get to, because one of the things that Guile, who's the human representative on the station, she was supposed to, she asked if, not that they have to, just that they would consider Anderson for the Spectre status. Spectres, this whole thing we'll get into when I talk about the base game at some point, which is that Spectres are like these kind of like James Bond, sort of like special enforcers in the galaxy. Like, they don't go by military law or police law. Like, they are above that. The only person they're beholden to is the council, right? So they have more free reign to do missions as they see fit and to get things done as they see fit, so long as the mission gets done, which your character in Mass Effect 1 will inevitably become the first human Spectre. But Saren is one, so he kind of blames everything on Anderson, and they do not allow Anderson to become the first human Spectre. And so that's really, it's really a thing I have to talk about. And we already kind of knew this because there is a optional dialogue you can have with Anderson where he talks about how he almost became a Spectre once, but he was ripped away from that because Saren lied about how the events of their mission went down, and so he was not allowed to become, you know, a Spectre. But that being said, this book was really great. I think it's an absolute great introduction to this universe, and it was fun to see these characters before the events of the game, and I do think it's worth your time. So that's been pretty much it, guys. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, sharing up a ton, don't forget to subscribe, and remember that the Reapers are coming, and if you don't subscribe, they will get you. So please subscribe. Until next time, guys, may the Force be with you. Wait, wrong universe. May the Reapers not indoctrinate you. Oopsie.